So if you're as observant as the kids were, you'll notice a little friend in the front row here, a little experiment, a little camera. We are, it's something we've talked about for a little while now, posting sermons to YouTube, because as technology changes, podcasting, which is what we do now to get the electronic versions of our sermons out there, it's becoming less relevant. And YouTube seems to be like the new way to get our media. And so we are doing our best to sort of start keeping up with the times. So we'll see how it works. It's an experiment today, and maybe it'll get on YouTube, maybe it won't. But we want to try to keep abreast of what is going on. Speaking of which, that's kind of what our series is about. We're going to talk about technology and how it's affected us. I don't know if anybody here ever feels a little bit overwhelmed by the rate of technological change today. When I think about technology, I realize that I am now officially old. I won, at my high school, I won the OAC, which is grade 13, for those of you who didn't get to experience that joy. It's like instead of a victory lap. But I won the OAC Computer Science Award, which meant that I was pretty proficient at computers. And what is ironic about that is it wasn't until the year after I won that and I got to university that I, for the first time, experienced this new, crazy, out there, I didn't even really know what the point of it thing was, that was called the internet. Has anybody heard of that? Okay. So this internet thing, this World Wide Web or whatever, I didn't know what it was. I had heard of it in high school. In my last year of high school, we got some computers in a different lab that were hooked up to the internet, but I didn't know why that was important or how I would ever use that. I also got, when I went to university, something that I thought cost money, but actually they gave it to me for free, and that was an email account. Have you ever heard of those? Yeah, they're starting to become obsolete now as we move. It seems to be more towards texting and Facebook messaging. But so I am officially old when I start thinking about technology. Some of you are older than me, and some of you are less connected than I am. But I can tell you that right here in my pocket on this iPhone is probably more computing power than my entire high school had when I was growing up. I don't have any way of knowing that for sure, but I don't necessarily want to do the work to find it out. Maybe I could say, Siri, does my phone have more than my high school? I don't know. The point is, things have changed very quickly. And in my pocket, right here on this iPhone, I have access to information, almost everything we know about everything, right? Information around the world. I have access to all my friends, not just friends that are in my life right now, but friends like from high school who might have gone to that same computer lab with me. I have access to entertainment. I could be watching, if I took it out, I could actually watch a TV show while I talk to you, right? I have access to tools, all kinds of different tools that might be useful for one thing or another. Medical tools, calculators, all kinds of crazy things. Do you remember when you had to go out and buy a calculator? And now it's like, well, if you happen to have one on hand, but otherwise you've got them on your phone, you got them everywhere. The world has changed very quickly. The other interesting thing that's happened is now I'm connected or can be connected to people all around the world. I'm not sort of stuck in my own little country or my own little neighborhood. I am just as, connected to people on the other side of the planet, or could be just as connected to people on the other side of the planet as people right here in this neighborhood. And so all this has really changed our lives if you sort of kept up with the technology, if you're, moving forward. It has caused some problems too. I don't know, have you ever had your day ruined by Facebook? Anyone here? Yeah, or at least part of your day, or something you read on Facebook that just ruined the rest of your day. Have you ever been tempted to access the wrong thing on the internet? content that's not so great. Have you ever said the wrong thing on Facebook and got yourself in hot water? I have a friend who was fired because he was blogging about his job. And guess what? His boss found it. Big surprise, right? And he wasn't saying very flattering things, and he got let go just simply because of that. I don't know if you've ever found yourself almost addicted to being connected, to being on Facebook or being on one of those sites or whatever. Found yourself compulsively pulling your phone out. I have this funny thing where I have like ghost vibrations. Does anybody have that? Where you think your phone's vibrated and then you don't even have it in your pocket? Anyone? Yeah, okay, all right. I'm on one person, so that's good. Or how about the phoneless panic? Does anybody experience panic when they reach down and their phone's not there? And they're like, where is it? So it's changed things. It's made our lives better in some ways. It's challenged us in some other ways. And I want to spend some weeks addressing some of the challenges that this technology and this connectedness and this internet stuff and smartphones and all that, some of the challenges that they throw our way. And look at maybe what the Bible has to say about it. Now, the Bible doesn't address this technology directly. You might be surprised. But the problems that we encounter through technology are just the same old human problems that we've had for thousands of years. And so when the Bible addresses the problems of our hearts and the problems of our relationships, it also addresses the problems of technology. So if you aren't someone that is connected to the internet, or if you aren't, technologically into all this stuff, I hope that what we talk about is still relevant to you. It's just you'll have to think about it in a different way. I want to start today by talking about connectedness, the relationships, the relational aspect of being connected on the internet, and specifically going to pick on Facebook today. But because I am old, I do realize there are newer, social media networks and stuff like that. And so teenagers, you guys are going to have to translate this into whatever language is relevant to you. I know some of you are still on Facebook, which is good, but this probably covers the whole social aspect of being online. But like I said, I'm going to specifically talk about Facebook. Now and I went and checked this in preparation for the sermon, I have 532 Facebook friends. Yeah, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? You guys I don't know how many you have. Probably some have more, probably some have less, but I felt like 532 was a fairly decent number, respectable. And because of Facebook, I am now connected to these people in some sort of small, slight way. This is different from a few years ago. What would happen? Now, these are people, by the way, from all points in my life. I have my babysitter growing up, is on my Facebook. I have friends from high school. I have people who weren't friends in high school, but went to my high school. I have acquaintances from college and university that I have not kept up with. I have people from my first church and ministry settings, and I have people here in town that I maybe met once and have never talked to again, but somehow, we became Facebook friends. And I'm now connected to these people. It used to be you would encounter people as you went along the path of life, and you would leave them behind, and sort of leave them in what we call the past. And now with Facebook, we get to drag all those people along with us as we move forward into the future. I don't know if you've ever felt that that's kind of weird. Like dragging all these people from high school or from, that you met randomly on the street, and now they're your friend on Facebook. And so, it's allowed us to be connected to a lot more people, but there are pros and cons to this, aren't there? There's, on the one hand, you're connected to more people, but on the other hand, a lot of those relationships are extremely shallow. It can't even really be classified as relationships. It is so wonderful that I can know that the person that I barely remember from high school had an Egg McMuffin for breakfast this morning. I mean, I would not have known that before Facebook, right? So there are those good points about it. But quantity is not quality, right? Like, just because we have more relationships does not mean that they're better. It does not mean that they're more rewarding or enriching. I have seen enough cat photos with trite sayings to last me for the rest of my life. So I don't need any more cat photos. I don't need any of that stuff that people are sharing. we have a lot of relationships, but they can be very shallow. And as I thought about this, I thought, quantity versus quality. I would much rather have 10 good friends who knew me well attend my funeral than have 500 people post to my wall about what a nice guy I was. And maybe that's symbolic for what we really want to think about here in terms of quality of relationships. But I thought, you know what, that is really what I would like to make as my goal. When I die, I want to have some good, close friends who knew me well. And I really could care less how many Facebook friends I have. Now, the other thing is, the good thing, pro of Facebook, is it's sort of this safe place to open up a little bit and share a little bit about yourself. And if you are extremely shy or introverted and you struggle in social settings, online can be a great place to begin to open up and let people get to know you. And I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine this week about, what do you think some of the dangers are? And he was really looking at it like, actually, there's some really positive things. Some people find online as a safe place to develop relationships they never would have face-to-face because they're so nervous. And I think that's true too. But it can also lead to this level of not opening up, of faking it. I don't know if you've ever read someone's status and you're going, that's not them. They're faking it. Like that is them trying to impress everyone with how spiritual they are or how smart they are or how whatever. And you're just going, that doesn't ring true. So the fact that you can put yourself out there on Facebook a little bit is a good thing, but the fact that you can fake it when you do so means that if all you ever do is relate online, nobody ever really gets to know you. And this can be intentional, like, you're hiding part of yourself, or it can just be unintentional. It's just reality. As I was doing research, I discovered only 7% of communication is the words that we say, okay? That means 93% of communication is our facial expression, our body language, our tone of voice, those sorts of things. And no, I don't think that emojis count as facial expressions. You can do a little smiley, and that sometimes helps, especially if you've just said something really negative. Then you do a little smiley, then everything's better, right? But truthfully, you can't really get to know someone just through written words, not through letters, not through text, not through Facebook posts, not through messaging back and forth. Only 7% can you really get to know through just words alone. You need that facial body language, that extra information that accompanies being with someone. The other thing that happens is Facebook's this great opportunity to share what's going on in our lives, isn't it? But there's some negatives to that too. I remember Rachel last week came back from her trip to, they went to Great Wolf Lodge for Ethan's birthday, and it was like, she'd posted about that. I saw pictures of everything. So when Rachel came back, she was like, started to tell people about it, and everyone was like, yeah, I know. I saw it. It's like I was there with you. And so there's this, on one hand, it allows people to see what's going on in your life, but on the other hand, it sort of blocks you from actually sharing life sometime on a way that is particularly meaningful. So I want to talk to us about sort of moving past some of these barriers and having real relationships. I think all of us are hungry for relationships, right? I mean, a lot of us are going, yeah, that's common sense. Social media, it's a tool for friendships, but I'm never going to let it replace my actual relationships. And that's probably because you're old. And so you're used to having actual relationships. But I think as we move forward, for those of us who are younger, especially for teenagers, this is a real challenge. How do you balance the online relationships with the real life relationships? So being connected is good, but there's a balance that has to come. Now, there's this hunger inside of us that I think comes from God. It's an impulse woven into our being by our Creator. A hunger for friendship, a hunger for relationships. When God created the earth, if you'll think back to the Genesis story we sometimes talk about, God pronounced everything as good. He created everything and he said, good, 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 very good. Everything is perfect except for one thing. He said, it's not good for man to be alone. And so God created Eve. And it says that he created Eve as a suitable helper for Adam. And some people have taken that to, look at the woman as subservient. But I can tell you that the word for helper there is used of God in most of the other occurrences in the scriptures. And so there's nothing about that makes a woman subservient. It's actually about being a partner in life, that people need partnership. And it's interesting, too, that when God gave Eve to Adam and Adam to Eve, he didn't put them together primarily as spouses or as lovers, if I dare use that word. He put them together as friends, as partners and equals and people to share life together. And so beyond marriage, and of course that's a passage that's relevant to marriage, but beyond marriage, what that's saying is that God has placed in us a need for friendship, for partnership, for companionship. And hopefully you get that from your spouse, but there's probably more of a need for it from other people as well. And so we all have this sort of inner impulse to build relationships. It's a lot like hunger for food, right? All of us get hungry for food. If you're a healthy person, then from time to time, you want to eat, right? Is there anyone here who doesn't get hungry or who has to eat as a discipline? Like, oh, I've got to remember to eat today. Maybe if you get really busy, if you're, into your job or something. But truthfully, when we get hungry, we just go foraging, don't we? We go looking. And the same thing happens with relationships. We get hungry for relationships when we go looking for them. But I don't know if you've ever had this happen where you're so hungry, like you haven't eaten all day and you just need some nutrition in your system, some energy, and the first thing you come across is a bag of Doritos, zesty cheese Doritos, or butter tarts. And you open them up and you just start eating. And it feels so good because you were so hungry. And it's filling your belly and you're feeling better. And it's great. It satisfies that impulse to eat. But after a while, it starts to turn. It doesn't feel so good. You start to regret the fact that you just filled your stomach with whatever Doritos are made out of, sawdust and flavoring. Or butter tarts, which are much more nutritional and natural. On sale after the service. Yeah, raisins, that's fruit. It counts as a fruit. Pecans count, that's Atkins diet there. So the point is that just because hunger is an impulse that we fulfill naturally doesn't mean we fulfill it in a healthy way. Discipline comes into our eating habits when we force ourselves to eat healthy no matter what we feel like. I think the same thing applies to our relationships. We may have this impulse to go out and have friendships, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we fill it with healthy friendships. And so we have an impulse to go out and connect with other people. And I think sometimes what happens with social media and Facebook is we go out and we fill our hunger for relationships with these shallow Facebook relationships that don't really mean anything. And so what we do is we fill up our belly and we make that need go away, but it doesn't offer us the nutrition that a true friendship would. So the first step towards understanding, what to do with eating, if you have bad eating habits, is understanding nutrition, understanding what healthy eating looks like. So for us, as we talk about what may be a healthy way to incorporate social media into our lives, I think we need to understand what a true friendship actually looks like and what we need to get out of it. And so that's what I want to talk about is just, I have 4 traits of a healthy friendship. And we can look at how our friends are to us, and we can look at how we are to our friends. But hopefully this will be helpful to you as you kind of look at your friendships and you go, have I got caught up in the junk food of just shallow surface relationships, and sort of filling my hunger with something that's not particularly great for me? Or, do I eat a little bit of junk food, but I have the nutrition that I need? Do I have the friendships, the depth of friendship that I'm really longing for, that really will make a difference in my life? So the first thing in a healthy friendship is honesty. Friendships are increasingly honest, which means, you start out with a little bit of vulnerability and you build on that. Ephesians 4:25 says this. And by the way, not all of these verses use the word friend in them. Some of them do. But the idea is this is what a healthy relationship looks like. These are passages where the scriptures are trying to teach us this is what it means to have healthy relationships with each other. And here's what Ephesians 4:25 says. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, to your friends, for we are all members of one body. Now, this level of honesty is sometimes very difficult. And so, there's always this over disclosure, isn't there? People who just barf out all their dirty laundry on anyone who will listen. And that's not what I'm talking about here. There are things that should kind of be kept to yourself and should be private and that you should only share maybe with your deepest friendships. But those things that you hold inside that you don't really want anyone to know about, or you're kind of ashamed of, or the things where you're not at your best, there's tremendous freedom in having a friend or some friends who know those things about you. There's tremendous freedom in just opening yourself up, in just letting people get to know you as you are. Now, this happens a little bit at a time. We open up a little bit, we trust a little bit, and if they don't, wham us or hurt us somehow, then we're free to open up a little bit more. But it is difficult for us because it leaves us vulnerable. Vulnerable means able to be wounded, right? Vulnerable means I am in a place where I might get hurt. And so to be honest with someone and really open up about our doubts and fears and struggles, it takes work. It doesn't happen naturally. It takes discipline. It takes a decision to go, you know what, I want my friendships to go deeper, and so maybe I'll be the one to take the first step by opening the door a little bit more. The other thing it takes, if you want to have a good friendship, you need to learn how to ask questions. I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship where, April and I talk about this sometimes, about people who don't know how to bounce the ball back. In a conversation, a normal conversation, it's kind of like bouncing a ball back and forth. Here's the ball to you, you pass it back to me. And I don't know if you've ever been around people who don't know how to bounce the ball back, where you're like, hey, how are you doing? And they're like, I'm doing pretty well. You can ask about how I'm doing, or, how's your family? My family's okay. Okay, so there's a natural question asking that goes back and forth in a conversation with a friend. And in order to have deeper friendships, you need to start asking deeper questions. How are you feeling today? If you know they're struggling with something, follow up with them on how are you, I know you were struggling with that last week. How are you doing now? Now, this sounds like very simplistic stuff, but I'm telling you, we don't know how to do it very well. I don't think we are very good at really getting below the surface. We're excellent at hanging out with friends and just staying on the surface level. But there's not all that much that's rewarding about that. We have to get better about asking questions that really get deeper. Honesty is absolutely essential for a good friendship. The ability to just open yourself up, good and bad, and say, this is who I am. The second thing, and these two things have to go hand in hand. You can't have honesty without acceptance, okay? And so in a good friendship, you need to accept the person, and they need to accept you exactly as you are, unconditionally. Romans 15:7 paints a very high standard of this. Romans 15:7 says, accept one another then just as Christ accepted you in order to bring praise to God. Now, you can't have honesty without this kind of acceptance, and you have to offer this acceptance if you want your friend to be honest with you. I don't know if you've ever struggled with this, where you get to the point in a friendship where they start to get annoying to you. Have you ever gotten close enough to someone where you start going, this person is not as good as I thought they were early on. I thought they were pretty cool. They're kind of lame. Do you ever have that feeling? If you have that feeling, that means you're getting deeper in friendship. If you never have that feeling, that means you're on the surface. Because all of us have things that are attractive, and those are the things we put forward, right? And we also have things about us that are repulsive, that people would see if they could see them and go, ooh, I don't like that about that person. Everyone in this room has both attractive and repulsive things. And if you start to feel about your friend like, ooh, I don't like that about them. They talk too much. They, do this or that. That means you're getting to know them. That's a good sign. But at that point, you're faced with a choice. of either accepting them for who they are, or giving up on them, or trying to change them, or trying to pressure them to be something different. And so in a friendship, you do need to get to that point where you're wondering, oh, do I really want to be friends with this person? They're that is a choice, a discipline to say, yes, I'm going to be an accepting place for them, and I'm going to accept them just as they are. Now, in teenage years, I think especially, this idea of acceptance and this desire for people to accept us and like us can sometimes translate into peer pressure to change in order to be accepted. And so that's one thing to look at in your friendships. If you are always feeling pressure to become someone different, then that person is not offering you acceptance. If you're feeling pressure to do things that you don't really want to do, now this is, this sometimes there's a challenging aspect we're going to talk about in a second. But if you have friends who are always trying to get you to be someone that you're not, then they're probably not your friends. And you either need to go to them and talk to them and say, would you just accept me the way I am? Or you need to go find different friends. Now, sometimes this happens like with our, friends who are maybe more rebellious, trying to get us to do things that we don't want to do. I think sometimes it can happen with people who are church people and they're non-church friends, where Christians can put so much pressure on our friends to believe what we do or to go to church or to become a Christian that it's actually a threatening relationship, where we're not accepting the fact that they're not at the same place with their faith. And so it's important for us not just to have that acceptance from other people and to be in friendships where we're accepted, but it's also important for us to offer that same sort of acceptance and say, it doesn't matter where you are with God, it doesn't matter if you're an atheist or what, I accept you and I love you the way you are. And that's the kind of friendships we need to offer to other people. Now, just because we accept each other the way we are doesn't mean we want each other to stay where we are. And so the next part of a healthy friendship is that we have the freedom to call out the best in each other. Okay, Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. That doesn't sound like a particularly gentle experience, does it? Iron sharpening iron, it sounds kind of grinding and rough and knocking off bits that aren't supposed to be there. And I think sometimes that's what friendship is like. A good friendship doesn't just accept the other person, doesn't just say, oh, that's how they are. A good friend cares enough to say, yeah, but I think you could do better. Or I'm not going to let you sink into that hole. I'm going to pull you out. I'm going to call out the best in you because I can see the best in you. That sometimes means asking hard, uncomfortable questions. Sometimes it means saying, hey, I'm kind of concerned about you and the direction you're heading. Do you have the freedom to do that in your relationships? Do you have the freedom to do that in your closest friendships? And do they have the freedom to do that to you? Again, this ties in with the honesty and the acceptance. We don't take those things very well from people we don't know, right? A stranger on the street walks up to me and says, hey, I don't like the way you do your hair. I'm going to, because I'm a pastor, politely and nicely tell them thank you very much. But I'm not going to receive it well. On the inside, I'm going to be mean. But if a good friend says, or my wife, she says, you know what, your hair kind of looks, you could part it on the other side or something, then I'm going to take that better and think on a deeper level. If God, or if our friends speak to us in a deep way to say, you know what, when this little habit you have, it kind of drives everyone nuts. If they're doing it out of love and acceptance, that's a lot different than if it's some stranger that you don't really know that well. And so healthy friendships have the freedom to call out the best in each other. One more thing that I already touched on is this idea of sharing life. When we post everything to our Facebook statuses or Twitter or Instagram or whatever, it is sort of a healthy impulse, I think, to share life. To say, hey, here's what's going on in my life, and I want other people to know about it, because I think we want to walk through life with other people. We don't want to be all alone. And so Facebook statuses are an easy way to share our lives with others. And that is something that is part of a healthy, meaningful friendship. Romans 12:15 says, rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. And so Facebook becomes a way to do that in a very shallow way. But I don't think there's anything that substitutes with sharing your life with a person who is physically present. In the good times, to celebrate the joy by throwing a party, by being happy with you. In the bad times, just to be there, to offer words of encouragement, to put their arm around you. Those are things that can't be replaced by posts to the wall. I had a friend who's a distant friend who I haven't talked to in years, but is a Facebook friend, whose father died. And he posted it on there, and everybody's, offering their little 2 lines of comfort. And I thought, that's nice. It's nice for everyone to have taken 15 seconds of their day to say, I'm sorry. But I hope there's someone there with him. I hope there's someone with an arm around him who's giving him more than a post to the wall, because posts on our wall are this deep, but a physically present person goes so much deeper. And so we can't lose that physical presence in order to share our lives, in order to go together with a friend, with a companion. Those are simple things. They're common sense. There's nothing there that is brilliant. There's nothing there that anybody is going, wow, I never thought of that, I don't think. But they're reminders of what goes into a healthy friendship. And I think to sort of cap it all off, maybe it would be helpful to understand why God gave us human friendships and human love. And I want to go to 1 John 4:12. And this is just such a neat passage that talks about what happens in our own love relationships with each other, which is really what friendship is. It's loving another person. No one has ever seen God. But if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. That's kind of a complicated sentence, but I think what John is trying to say is that God is invisible. That's a barrier, right? We have a hard time relating to God because he's invisible, because we can't hear his voice, because we can't see him there with us. There's this sort of intangible way we can connect with him, a spiritual way we can connect with him, but we're physical beings, and so there's a limitation to how well we can relate to God. And I think what 1 John is saying here is that when we love each other, it puts flesh and blood on God's love. It helps us understand the way that God feels about us. When we love, when we have deep friendships, good friendships, healthy friendships, it makes the invisible God visible to us. All those things we talked about, the ability to be honest and vulnerable, the acceptance just as we are, the desire to call out what's best in us, the presence through thick and thin, good and bad. Those are all traits of God's love for us. But it's harder to understand it when it's coming from God because he's invisible, because there's so much we can question. When God shows us his love through a good friend, it makes sense in a way that we can see in flesh and blood. And I think as we think about friendship in our life, maybe that's the best, most basic question we can ask. In my friendships, am I experiencing the kind of love that God has for me? And in my friendships, am I giving to the people the kind of love that God has for them? We become images of God to each other. Facebook is a great place to start. It's a great spice to season our relationships up. It's a great tool to get to know each other a little bit better. But it is absolutely not a replacement for a few good, close, deep friendships. So maybe you're sitting here going, yeah, I have those, that's obvious. Or maybe you're going, I don't. I've kind of let those lapse. Or I've been filling my need for social interaction with the junk food of just being connected on a shallow level online. Or maybe you're going, I wish I had that, but I don't even know who to turn to. I don't have anyone who's even a potential friend. And so I just want to pray as we close this up and ask God to help us in this area. I think it's something that we could all use help with. God, this idea of friendship, this idea of being close to other human beings, and in those relationships, having fun, enjoying each other's presence, sharing our lives together, and demonstrating the love that you have for each of us to each other. It's logical. It makes sense. It's something that each of us wants, I think. We don't always know how to get it. And so I pray that you would help each person here to form the kind of relationships that are meaningful, that are fulfilling and life-giving and nourishing to our souls. I pray that you would help us connect with the right people. If the people and our friends right now or in our life right now aren't really the friends that will provide this, help us find new ones. And if it's something we need to do to open up the door, to take the first steps into a deeper level of friendship, I pray you would help us do that and challenge us to do that. For each of us, God, maybe the most important thing is for us to understand your love and understand that you relate to us as a father and as a friend. And with the same love that the best of our human love doesn't even approach. Help us understand that first and then experience that in our relationships. For each person here, God, I pray your joy and your presence throughout this day, and for the mothers especially. God, I pray this would be a rich and rewarding and fulfilling day with their families, with their kids. Thank you for all they do. Thank you for their love and the way that it demonstrates your love. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm done now. I also wanted to open it up. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I have, as I've thought about this, there may be things that other people struggle with that I don't have covered in the sermon series. And so I would invite you, if you say, I'd really like you to cover this or that, Jeremy, send me an email or Facebook message or a tweet or a text or Instagram it, or however you want to get it to me. I'm open to your questions and to your direction for the series. And if anybody has any questions about kind of what I've talked about today,